I want to start by saying that this video focuses on my experience as a binary trans woman, and won't necessarily best reflect the transphobia that a non-binary person experiences. Along those lines, there is a content warning for transphobia. Coming out as a binary trans person often includes a crash course in terminology. If you browse an online transgender community, no doubt you will see all sorts of new terms and phrases. Assigned gender at birth, dead name, HRT, so on. If you spend some time on these communities, you'll see the same posts crop up again and again. A constant struggle, a deep desire, a hopeful longing. Do I pass? Do I have any chance at passing? For those unaware, passing for a binary trans person means that others see them for the gender that they are, rather than the one that they were assigned at birth. For most people, this is incredibly important in alleviating dysphoria and social anxiety. Passing isn't inherently problematic. I feel like it's important for people to feel like others are seeing them in a way that's consistent with how they see themselves. But it can get a little bit problematic. For a deeper look into the problems with passing culture, check out Mia Mulder's video, How to Pass as a Woman. For the purposes of this video, I want to distinguish between passing and cis-passing. Cis-passing is where the transgender person is not only seen as the gender that they are, they're also assumed to be cisgender. To some of you, this may not seem like an important distinction. Some of you may not even be able to see the distinction at all. But it's important to remind everybody that you can see a transgender woman as a woman, even if you know that she's transgender, because the fact that she is transgender does not make her less of a woman. It's in this space between passing and cis-passing that I think that we let transphobia into ourselves and our thoughts. For most of my transition, I've been hyper-focused on passing. When I first came out, I put as much effort as I could into getting as far into my transition as I could. Being a visibly trans person at the beginning of your transition is hell. You know you don't belong in your assigned gender, but people around you don't see you as the gender that you are. And so I resolved to get out of that stage as quickly as possible. The only problem being that even when I started passing as a woman, I wasn't happy with where I was. I was still facing discrimination and being treated poorly. The one thing that I remember most about this time period was how no service worker ever seemed to want to look me in the eyes. And that devastated me. I put as much effort as I could, more and more time into passing until it consumed me. It was only many months later that I realized the mistake that I was making. The spore of transphobia that I was allowing to grow unfettered. I was faced with a tough situation. I felt societal pressure and was forced to deal with it. I correctly determined that there was a problem, and I incorrectly determined that the problem was me. The solution in my mind was to strive to cis-pass, and there are a lot of problems with that approach. The most prominent being that it suggests that it's inherently shameful to be transgender and that we should seek to hide our trans status. The mistake that I made was taking the situation at face value. The problem wasn't that I was being seen as transgender, it wasn't even that I was transgender. The problem was with society itself. People are raised to believe that gender is immutable, that any deviation from your assigned gender is aberrant behavior. I was so caught up in trying to best find the way to justify my existence, I didn't really stop to think how that was affecting my mental health. I was shouting to the world, I exist. And when it responded, please don't, though, I began to say it ever quieter, until I was eventually whispering, I exist. Until it became, let me exist. I was putting the power back in their hands. Changing your presentation to fit a mold gives all the power to the people who make that mold. We exist. If you are struggling with this like I was, I want to tell you, it's okay to be transgender. It's okay to be visibly transgender. It's okay to feel ashamed and to feel guilt. But the people who make you feel that way, they need to change, not you. It's incredibly difficult to be made to feel like your existence is an affront to everything good and pure. But we can't let that affect our perception of ourselves. I've lived most of my life in the closet, kept there by ignorance. Not my own. I knew from a very young age that I was transgender. But the ignorance of those around me terrified me and made me feel like I could never come out. It's impossible to know how many people out there are silently suffering while their friends make attack helicopter jokes and they pretend to laugh along. You don't need to be transgender to experience transphobia, and you don't need to be trans to call it out either. I want to end the video by talking about the people who are perhaps most at risk for societal transphobia: non-binary trans people. You can see how easy it is for a binary trans person to fall into a mindset that actively hurts those that fall outside the binary. Binary trans person who seeks to blend in is often missing an opportunity to normalize trans people in their community. For example, while normalizing the use of pronouns as part of an introduction may make us feel othered in the short term, it's only through the normalization that we can make the practice ubiquitous among everyone, regardless of gender identity. While it may suck to feel like we are being clocked, which is to be recognized as or assumed to be transgender, we should look into why it sucks, and how we can make it suck less. Non-binary people don't have the privilege of passing. They can't conform to societal pressure. They don't fit into the two boxes that society tells us we must fit into. I don't know how that must feel, but I do know how I feel when it's discovered that I don't fit into those boxes either. It's incredibly important for us to recognize where we should be putting our efforts. It's not actually bad to want to blend in. It's not actually bad to make your trans identity only a small part of the amazing person that you are. But we should not lose sight of the changes that need to be made on a societal level. We are not alone as binary trans people in feeling that societal pressure to conform. There are measurable steps that we can be taking to reduce the kind of thinking that I was trapped in. We need to place less focus on passing. We need to look at why so many of us are not proud to be transgender. We can't come to terms with it ourselves. We can at least promote a society that doesn't make us feel like we need to hide who we are. At the very, very least, we can hope that someday transgender people will not be shamed of their identity, because it's okay to be transgender.